think I can go ahead and start. It's about 8:30. I'll do most of my presentation sitting up in here because I really couldn't get the laptop set up in the middle of the screen. And I'll try to project my voice, but please feel free to raise your hand if you cannot hear me okay. So I see some familiar faces in here. For those of you who are new in here, my name is Anjali Bhange. I've been with Esri for almost 3 years now. Currently, I'm in a role as a technical advisor. I do technical advisory role with some of the pipeline organizations. And apart from the technical advisory role, I also do project management. And from last 3 years, I've been focusing mostly on ArcGIS pipeline referencing. I've been doing pilot implementation, working with the business partners, working with our organizations to do the implementation of ArcGIS pipeline referencing. The first 2 years of Esri, I've worked within the pipeline referencing product team itself. So I work really close with the product team itself, and been focusing on the pipeline referencing for last 3 years that I've spent at Esri. So welcome to this session. I know it's Friday, 8:30. I'm sure we all are pumped up to learn more about linear referencing. I hope you all had a great time, and just wanted to get a feel about what type of audience we have here. How many of you heard about pipeline referencing or working with it? And does everybody feel comfortable with the linear referencing terminology? Okay, that's good, otherwise it's going to go all over the head, okay? And as you can see, this is a dev summit. So today what I'll be focusing mostly on is how to use the pipeline referencing functionalities and capabilities at the enterprise level. I will not be spending too much time on the desktop, but I still have some geoprocessing tools and script that I'm going to show at the desktop. But we'll be mostly focusing at the enterprise level because we want our users to see outside the desktop, outside what Esri gives, outside the box, what users can build. So this session is mostly focused on that. So the way I set up my presentation today is I have some slides. I'll try to keep the slides really quick. I have about 10 to 15 slides that gives you an overview of what the pipeline referencing product itself is. So we'll take a look at what the product is, get a good overview of it, and then I'm just going to jump into the demos. Then we'll open up for a Q&A session. Yeah. We have a really small crowd in here, so at any point you have a question, just raise your hand. So the pipeline referencing overview, there are a couple of things that are really important with the pipeline referencing. The first is the information model. And some of you who are familiar with the pipeline referencing or might have seen some of our demos, what we really talk about the information model is the pipeline referencing itself is a very flexible information model. And the reason why we say it's a flexible information model is it's not tied down to a specific database. What pipeline referencing does is it gives you like an information model. It has certain feature classes and specific fields that it's looking for. That's where the users basically do the configuration. But as long as this feature class is present in your geodatabase, it can work with any of the data model, either be pods, either be UPDM, or you might have any geodatabase, custom geodatabase within your organization. So there are some organizations who probably would not benefit from using a standard database model, right? So you might have built something in-house custom. So pipeline referencing would work with any of the database any of the geodatabase, as long as your feature classes, as long as we are working with the feature classes. That's basically what our information model is. So our information model first consists of routes and events and intersection. And these are not any special type of files within the geodatabase. It's again a simple feature class as a polyline feature class or as a point feature class. Like say if you are working with events, it's like a point feature class. ArcGIS Pro, the desktop tools at ArcGIS Pro is where the users have capabilities to build their network. So we provide them the tools to administer, to manage their linear referencing system. So in the desktop, ArcGIS Pro is where they are configuring their information model. And also the ArcGIS Pro is where the users will be working with their routes, like editing their routes, like a reroute, a pipe extension, pipe retirement, any of those functionalities that are associated very specific to the route is what we are going to work with ArcGIS Pro. At the ArcGIS Enterprise level, some of these functionalities that I have been talking about, you can take these functionalities and capabilities, and with the use of ArcGIS Enterprise, you can expose this functionality at an enterprise level. So basically what you have is your REST endpoints, linear referencing REST endpoints is what you get. And in the demo, I'll show you how to publish this, and how to get to the REST endpoints and how you can build widgets using this REST endpoints. At the ArcGIS Enterprise level, the biggest component of pipeline referencing is an event editor. Event editor is a web application. This is where the users will be performing their edits to events such as adding an event, deleting an event, retiring an event, any of those capabilities, you can do it at an event editor level. That's at a web application. So you have ArcGIS Pro where you're managing your routes, and then you also have web application called Event Editor where you're managing your events. Of course, we have Geoprocessing Tool that does bulk loading of like your routes, or if you're working with like say ILI data and you needed to add bulk data such as event data to your advanced linear referencing system, you can use that using Geoprocessing Tool.
What part of this is specific to pipelines, or could it be used for any georeferencing model? Like roads, for example.
For roads and highways? Yeah.
Like what part is specific to pipelines? Like it looks like as you go further, right? Here.
So as long as it's linear referencing, you can apply this concept to anything like roads and highways and everything. But specific at the information model, couple of differences that you see is this tool is specifically built for the pipeline industry, right? So in the information model, you will see a hierarchy of what your routes are, what your lines are, and also in the pipeline industry, some of you might be aware of, it supports stationing, like equation stations. It has that support, whereas roads and highways does not have that equation station support. And this equation station support is something that is very specific to pipeline industry. So they both are like sister products, roads and highways and pipeline referencing, both are sister products, but it's this one is very specific to pipeline industry, and of course roads and highways is very specific. So like the workflows and stuff like that, you will see the information model almost being the same with few exceptions, but the workflows, how you work with it, how you do the reroutes, realignments, all of those, they have some twist of change to it. So since I've been talking about the information model, let's take a look at what.
Whether it's available in program, I have it in the next one.
Pardon me.
Is it available in the ArcGIS Pro? Pipeline referencing.
Yes, pipeline referencing component is available in ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro, yes. And then at the enterprise level also. So let's take a look at information model. This is the key of pipeline referencing, right? So for our information model, we always start at the center line. So center line is basically providing your geometry. It's saying where your routes are going to be built. So center line is a simple polyline feature class, and it's providing the geometry to build your routes. So using this center line, what we do is we build routes. Now, how is a center line different than routes? Routes is taking the shape from a center line and it's enabling the measures. So the center line is a simple polyline feature class, right? Whereas the route is a polyline feature class with M enabled. But it's getting its geometry from the center line. That's the difference between the center line and a route. And with pipeline referencing, when you build a route, pipeline referencing needs at minimum 2 calibration points, one at the beginning and one at the end. That's the minimum requirement for calibrating the routes. But if users have any more calibration points or the control points that they would like to add, they can still do that. But if pipeline referencing is building the route, that's what it does. By default, it will just add 2 calibrations, one at the beginning, one at the end. And the centerline sequence table in here is important. That's because it keeps the relationship between your center line and it keeps the relation between your route. So that center line ID field keeps that relationship between your routes and a center line. So this is the information model. And again, when we say the flexible information model, as long as this information model is available in your geodatabase, you can get the pipeline referencing configured to work. So as you can see, this is not tied down to any specific data model. So the event location methods. So how can you locate events using pipeline referencing? Traditionally, we have seen in the pipeline industry, we use route and measure, route and stationing information to locate where our pipeline assets are, where our events are. But outside that, we can, using pipeline referencing, you can locate events with offsetting from existing events by coordinates, by GPS coordinates. So when you add an event using the coordinates lat long, it will take that and translate that to a measure also. So are different ways of how you can locate events using pipeline referencing. And all our information model, other than center line, has from and to dates. This is what makes all the feature class time aware. So using this from and to fields, both in the routes, calibration, and events, you can go back in time and see what your data looks like. You can go back in time and see what your data looks like. So in this example, and I have here how your data looks like before you did a reroute and after you did a reroute. So it basically has inbuilt time awareness using the from and to dates to track your, go back to the history to figure. I've already talked about the platform components, but just wanted to go over that one more time. This is a ribbon toolbar in ArcGIS Pro. This is where the users will be, this is what the users will be using to do the route editing activities, such as your realignment, extension, retirement. Those are all the route editing activities. And of course, like the calibration points, like think about the calibration points as your control points. So if you want to add additional calibration points, control points, delete any of those, you can still do that. And splitting your center lines, identifying tool, identifying specific to your routes and measure. So this is the ribbon toolbar that you will see in ArcGIS Pro when you have this extension available. With ArcGIS Pro, what you will also see is Geoprocessing Tool. Geoprocessing Tool to load your bulk data. So if you have bulk, when you're doing a data migration, say moving to a new data model, or say you have tons of routes that you need to load. So we provide you tools here to do that bulk loading. We have tools to do your bulk loading of events as well with the geoprocessing tools. And pipeline referencing also supports multiple linear referencing. So you can have multiple networks. Say, for example, you can set up a network just based on your engineering stationing. Then you can also set up a network for your absolute measures. And you can set up a network for just say your odometer network readings, like between launcher to a receiver. So you can set up multiple networks in pipeline referencing, and then we provide you this transformation tools. So what would happen is if you have an event just based on stationing, but now you want to know what like the XY coordinate is, or with respect to your odometer network reading where those are. So you can take those events and do the translations between the different network. So within a pipeline organization, we know we have different business units, and different business units look at the events and route differently. Maybe the survey business unit is mostly looking at based on the lat long or coordinates, but then you have your engineering unit which is looking at just solely based on stationing. But then you also have a business unit who is doing the reporting. You're actually doing like say mileage reporting and things like that. So different business unit likes to look at events and routes differently. What pipeline referencing does, it allows you to build all these different networks based on how your business would benefit. And then you want to do any of the translations between that. You want to take an event from an engineering station and translate it over to a continuous network, you can still do that. Any of these geoprocessing tools you would be able to do. We have tools to do your dynamic segmentation for your reporting, and as such we have geoprocessing tools to that. The benefit of having this in a geoprocessing tool is, you can put that in the model builder. Right? If anything repetitive process that you have, you can put it in a model builder, or you can just script them. So geoprocessing tools provides you that advantage as well. Anything that you are constantly repeating the process, you can script it as a Python script or put it in a model builder as well. And if you want to consume any of this functionalities at enterprise level, you can publish the GP tools also. Publish GP services and consume that maybe in your existing web application, or build a new web application that can consume this GP services. And today we'll be mostly seeing the demo at the enterprise level. At the enterprise level is a user can publish some of these functionalities that I just discussed about at an enterprise level, and then consume that or augment their existing web application, or build new web applications that can consume this linear referencing functionalities. Event editor is one of the big components that we have in pipeline referencing, and when the users get this pipeline referencing extension, they get an event editor that they can configure. It's a web application. This is where the users are doing edits to their event. It's easy to configure web application, and I'm going to open the configuration file and show how you can do that. Yeah. This is where the users are doing their editing their events. Okay, so enough of the slides. What I'm going to do is to switch to demo right now. Okay, so I'm mostly going to be sitting. For those of you who cannot hear me, there are some chairs up in the front, or just wave at me so I can project my voice. Okay, so I'm going to start with just taking a look at what the information model looks like. I'm going. So this is my UPDM data model. I have an UPDM data model which I configured that with the pipeline referencing. So this is the symbology that you will see. This is my advanced linear referencing system, and I have two networks in here. I set up an engineering network and I set up a continuous network. Under the engineering networks are all my events in here. So pipeline referencing provides you tools to do this configuration. So I've already configured my UPDM, and when I talk about the information model, I'm going to right click on my advanced linear referencing system. We can going to go look at the properties. Let me zoom that in. Okay. So when I was talking about the information model, I was talking about the center line, I was talking about the routes. This is that information model that you are looking at. So you are just pointing within your geodatabase, you're pointing which is your center line, which is your calibration point, where is your center line sequence table residing, and then you're just doing a field mapping in here. Let's look at, center line feature class. So these are the field mapping that we are doing. This is the core information model. And you can see under my advanced linear referencing system in here, I built two networks. And you can build multiple networks in here. I built two networks, one to represent my engineering stationing, another one to represent my continuous, basically to represent the measures, the continuous absolute measures. And when I look at my network, I'm going to go look at the properties in here. This is where the whole flexibility of the pipeline referencing comes into picture. All I'm doing is I created a feature class to represent my network, and I did the field mapping in here. So as long as these fields are available, these fields with this right field type available in your information model or within your geodatabase, you can configure APR. So I already have a configured database model, and all I wanted to do was open this up to show that there is no any special type of APR features that we are creating. Everything is just a simple polyline feature class or a point feature class. I'm going to exit out of this ArcGIS catalog now, and then we can go to Pro. I'm in my ArcGIS Pro environment. Have you guys worked with ArcGIS Pro? Yeah, like it? Yeah? So when you have the extension ArcGIS Pro, this is the ribbon toolbar that you will be able to see. This ribbon toolbar lets you do your reroutes, your extension, retirement, all of those. So this is where you provide your route information and the stationing or the measure information and do your retirement. But what I want to focus right now is I want to show some of the geoprocessing tools and how you can use these geoprocessing tools to do most of your work. So I go to analysis. under Tools, under the Tools, this is the location referencing. It doesn't like me clicking here. So let's take a look at all these tools in here. Okay, so this is a configuration tools we have. These tools will help you create an advanced linear referencing system. This is where you create your networks, configure the whole information model of APR. So I'm going to go look at the other tools now. We have other geoprocessing tools where you can append events. Is like a bulk loading of your events. So you can do bulk loading of events. You can build, like generate events, will rebuild your shapes of the events. So a lot of geoprocessing tools like dynamic segmentation tools available in here. So using this configuration tool, what I did is I just want to show how you can use geoprocessing tools in different way, right? So what I did is I built this tool in here, a model builder tool in here. Oh, well, it's hard for me to show all of that. But this model builder tool, what it is doing is it's taking the PODS-Lite geodatabase as an input and running all this configuration. So the configuration tools from here, if I switch this off, so creating an LRS, this is where your advanced linear referencing system is getting built, and it's creating your network using these tools in here. Create a network with an existing feature data set or by creating a new feature data set. It's creating a network, and then it's taking the events. If I zoom in here, let me see. If you see, the PODS-Lite database has already some events in here, feature classes that can be events like your test pressure, operation condition, operating pressure, all of these. I'm taking those feature classes and configuring that with APR as an event. So I took all this geoprocessing tool, combined that. So at this point, what the user is just doing is providing the input as a PODS-Lite database, which has all the features in it. And I'm just running this tool to configure that with APR and do all the mapping that I just showed you a few minutes back. That's one way of doing that. Another way of doing that would be, let me go to my view and catalog. So we saw how to build a model builder tool, but the same thing what I did is I also put that as a script in here. So here the input parameter is your PODS-Lite, and behind the scene, the script is just taking those all feature classes that are available in the PODS-Lite model and configuring that as an APR information model and registering all the events. So if I want to open this, I'm going to edit so you can look at this tool. So when you look at this tool, so it's the same geoprocessing tools that I just showed is what is getting used in this script. So you can either script it or put it in a model builder tool, and we really encourage our users to use this geoprocessing tools. If there is something that you have in-house that you continuously do that, continuously repeat the steps, you can put it in the tool, model builder tool, or put that as a script and run it on demand, or put a scheduler on it and run on that. So the same geoprocessing tools, we saw how you can run on demand, build a model builder tool, or script it. This is just for the demonstration purpose that I wanted to show how you can use that. Okay, so that's the only time I wanted to spend on the desktop, but because we get a lot of questions around this. The next thing what I want to show you is we can start looking at the linear referencing capabilities at an enterprise level. So for that, let me switch to my remote machine that I already set it up. So I have this data in here. My data, I have events. I have events such as valve, DOT class, operating pressure, and also have my networks. I have my calibration points, which is control points, and I also have my network. So I've set up a pro project in here, which has all the layers that I would need. I've added that. So using ArcGIS Pro, what I would do is I'm going to go share this as a web layer. Okay, let me go ahead and do that. So when I go in here and share that as a web layer, you will see this dialog box in here. Okay, and that disappeared. Okay. So this function is like using any other web layer publishing. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's just like publishing as a web layer. The only difference that you would see is when you go to the configuration and when you have when you have pipeline referencing extension enabled at an enterprise level, you will see this capability in here which says linear referencing capabilities. So now what happens when you publish this as a web layer, apart from your REST endpoints, you will get REST endpoints for your linear referencing services also. So I've already went ahead published this. So let's look at that now. So this is my ArcGIS Enterprise account, and I'm going to go to contents in here and say that's the web map I published. Okay, it's a simple web map that I published. So when I go back to my ArcGIS REST services directory, I would see an event editor that I published, a map server in here. So just like any REST endpoints, it supports, so you can see I have all the layers that I publish, my valves, my leak, my pipe, my networks, all of those are available in here. And it supports like ArcGIS Enterprise core operations such as your querying, finding. I'm going to zoom in here so you can look at. Okay. So all the core support operations are supported. Apart from that, since we enabled that linear referencing capability, when we publish that web layer, you will see this additional supported extension, which is called the LR services, the location referencing server. Okay. So let's just go ahead and look at what that has to offer. So the location referencing server, that's the endpoint I'm here at. So what does that has now? It has my networks that I published, and it has the events that I published in here. Okay. And when I scroll all the way to see what kind of supported operations it has, so now it has additional supported operations such as applying edits to your events, creating the versions, deleting, reconciling, and posting. Apart from what you already have available, these are the additional ones. Those are available for you. And let's take a look at the engineering network now. So that's my network. So when we look at this network, you can see it has the core information model, the fields that I discussed about. It has the route ID, route name, the time awareness, the from and to dates. It's basically reading that. And it supports additional operations in here. So we provide users for additional REST endpoints to take the geometry and convert to measure, or measure to geometry. You can do those conversions here. You can do translation, checking events. This is how you would get to the REST endpoints for the linear referencing. So I'm opening a web app builder application. I've set up a simple web app builder application. So let's take a look at using this linear referencing REST endpoints, how you can build maybe widgets or a simple lightweight web applications that can help your organization. In here, again, I have events such as my anomaly, leaks, pipes, and I also have my network in here. So let's take at the first tool. I have a widget in here. It's called route and measure widget. Yeah. Would you close this? You guys able to read at the end? Yeah? Okay. So what this route and measure widget could do is it shows the networks that you have. So I'm going to pick the engineering network and provide a route name, or have built a selection tool. You can select on that one. So that's my route name. And right now I can provide a measure, like say I want measure 5,000 and I want to say zoom to it. It's zoom. So all I did is I did not provide any coordinates, right? All I provided is I provided a route name and I provided a measure. So it's doing that measure to geometry translation that we just saw at using that REST endpoints. So it's basically reading this web map, and then I've scripted this so it can do that measure to a geometry translation. I just provided one measure in here, but you can provide line A. So it's basically showing me the start, the from measure, or this could be your station also, and from measure, and it's showing this the to measure. So within your organization, you might have some of the user who just knows the route name and the measure, don't necessarily have coordinates for your pipeline assets, right? They just have the route and measure, or route and stationing. So you can build a simple web app builder that has this widget. And this widget is, I'm going to point you to some of the documents, but this widget is available in GitHub if you want to immediately download and start playing with it. It's already available. Okay, so let's take a look at my next one. I'm going to switch some of these layers off so we can look at things clearly. The second one I have is overlay events. Overlay events is basically doing your dynamic segmentation. Okay, you have your routes and you have events on the top of it. And during the dynamic segmentation, what it is doing is it's basically doing the dynamic segmentation. It's finding the start and end of the events and splitting those events. So what this overlay event inputs is, I'm going to give my engineering station network as an input, and I want to do a dynamic segmentation, say based on my class locations, the HCA class location, DOT class location, and an operating pressure. And I want to do this on this specific route. Okay. So I can do it in between a specific measure, but what I want to do is I want to do a dynamic segmentation over the entire route. So I'm going to say use the route start. So it's already reading that. And use the route end. So all my input parameters are, this is my network, and these are the two events, the DOT class and the operating pressure to do the dynamic segmentation, and I provided the route and stationing information. And I'm just going to say overlay those. It's running that, and it added a layer in here, but what would be useful is looking at the table. Let me expand this a little. And since I have a lot of fields, what I would do is I'm going to switch off some fields to get a little more clarity. Let me switch these ones off. I want to keep the class type. Let's look at that. I don't need this DOT class. Let me switch off these. I want operating pressure, date unit. Okay, I'm going to switch off the remaining in here. All I'm doing is switching off some of the fields so we can look at how it dynamically segmented. Okay, so when I zoom in here, so this is my route hierarchy. It has a line name, line ID, and an order ID. But this is what we basically want to look. This is basically what we want to look at. So now after the dynamic segmentation, I have information from my DOT class, and I also have an information from my operating pressures in here. So we took those events and did the dynamic segmentation, and you can also see how it dynamically segmented. So looks like on route 1, line B, from measure about 15,000 to 20,000, it shows what DOT class you have. And if I scroll all the way down, it shows what kind of operating pressure it has. And then I come back in here, look at it. So this 2 measure became the starting measure of this one on the same route, and it's showing how the class is different in here. You have new class location. Just for simplicity, I just kept 2 events so we can look at it. So that's basically what your dynamic segmentation is, and this widget is also available for you to download from GitHub. So you can build simple widget that is very business focused to your organization. Yeah? Pardon me, I couldn't hear you. I am in here using Web App Builder 2.7. I'm using 2.7, but I believe this widget could be used at 2.2 also. Yeah, but I will confirm that with you. Yeah. So the route and measure widget and the overlay events widget, which is basically your dynamic segmentation of the events, these 2 can be available. Apart from that, I'm in process of building some more widgets. Let me clear this. I have one more widget in here. What this widget does is I build it for the user to come in, and I still have to work with my tolerances, but click on multiple locations. I'll click on multiple locations and I say calculate. Because as a user, maybe I don't know what station it is at. So I just clicked on multiple locations in here to get what the stationing information is. So this is doing that geometry to measure translation that we saw, the supported operation. So you saw how in the route and measure tool, we are using measure to geometry translation. and back from geometry to measure translation. So these widgets could be built similar like that. And I have, within the same widget, I also have the station to geometry. Again, I have a station to geometry widget. In here, what I have is I put some IntelliSense in here. So when I start typing name, it recognizes already some of the routes I have. So let's say I pick the route and I want to know, like you can see the difference. I put both the options. You want to zoom it to your engineering stationing, or you actually want to go to your cumulative, which is basically your measures. I'm going to say 5,000. That's the stationing I'm looking at. I'm going to go calculate it. So it zoomed me, it took me to that route with that station in here. And if I change this to cumulatives, let's see, my stationing and measures are the same in here. But the similar thing based on what your business needs are, you can take this widgets and build it around your linear referencing support. This tool is not available to download at the widget yet, but I'll be happy to talk to you if you have any questions about how to build that. So that's basically about how you can get to the REST endpoints. And I do want to show the documentation we have. Let's look at the REST API. So I just want to point to some of the documentations we have. The REST API Developers Guide we have in here. This will help you if you are building any widgets, or if you want to learn how to get to the REST endpoints. You can refer in here. Linear referencing, REST APIs, you have those. And we also have some sample REST services. If you want to hit to when you're building a widget and you want to see how it works, we have some sample map server feature service available to you. We also have some of the web applications. So we have a bunch of sample web applications that you can get to now and download it. We have seen a lot of geometry to measure to geometry translation, but we have a simple drag and drop CSV file to route and measure, JavaScripts, converting. This is again converting station to geometry. We have already seen that. Let's take a look at event editing. So these are already available, all these JavaScripts are already available for you to download. So in here what I'm doing is I'm providing the route ID, event ID, and say giving a date today, and say apply edits. So you can see that I just added, I believe I added a valve right now. I added a valve right now, and it shows the event was added successfully. So these are ready for you to be downloadable and play with it. We have REST services that you can get to, sample REST services, pipeline sample REST services you can get to. So this is all for building something custom that you have. With ArcGIS Pipeline Referencing also comes with, just making sure I'm running on time. With ArcGIS Pipeline Referencing, you already get a web application called Event Editor. So let's take a look at Event Editor. I'm going to close out of this and we'll just go take a look at Event Editor. This is Event Editor. I'm signing into my ArcGIS Enterprise account. the same map area that you have seen. So how do you configure this event editor, right? So let's go look at my I want to log on to my portal. Let's go to content. So as a user, what you first have done is you published your LRS services. You basically shared your web layer, which also has the linear referencing capabilities. So this map would have all your networks and events, and you're going to publish this. When you publish this with the linear referencing capabilities, the web map will be available here in your content, ArcGIS Enterprise content. And also, when I go look at my configuration files, so in my www root, this is where the folder is, the event editor whole application folder. You get all this application when you install your ArcGIS pipeline referencing, you already get that folder installed. So you're taking that folder, which is called event editor, and putting it in this location. And all as a user you would have to do is, I'm going to open this configuration file. So now this configuration file is where you would go configure your event editor. And you can see this web map. So what you would have to do is get that web map ID. So you published using your ArcGIS Pro, you created a web layer, and this one, web map ID, you would get it from your portal. And security, we support, of course, the ArcGIS portal security, but you can configure your event editor with your Windows authentication also, OS, Windows authentication security also. So you can have only a single sign on. So you don't have to log on to your Windows and then log on to your portal. So you can have just one single sign on. So it respects the Windows authentication also. Depending upon what type of security you want, you set that up here in the configuration file. In my configuration file, I set the security to portal, and from the portal is where you get your app ID. So this is my application. When I go look at my application in here, in my settings, all the way down in here, registered info is where you are getting your application ID from. Yeah, just wanted to show how you can configure that. So you gave your web map ID, this is where your map is, and then we gave the portal ID, and we provided the portal URL. Rest everything, it can be configured if you wanted to, or you can just proceed as is. Pipeline referencing also comes with the data reviewer and workflow manager. So if you have configured any checks, your quality control, quality assurance checks with the data reviewer server, you can put that services URL in here. So when you open the event editor web applications, those data reviewer checks that you already pre-configured will show up. So we provide you a space for configuring those. And you can also let users be able to create a version out of what they are working from your, like say a parent version or any of the version. You can allow users to create those version, reconcile, post it, up to your business need. You want this to be exposed to the user, you can do that or not. Again, as you can see, this is like easy to configure a web application. All you are doing is in this configuration file, providing a web map, so it knows what to read for the map, and then it's you're giving it a security. you're pointing it to the security, either the portal security or the Windows authentication security. Okay. So let's just say we have already configured that, and let's look at the event editor now. So this is my event editor. I've already deployed this event editor. It's reading the same layers from the web map that we just published. My valves, it has all the events, it has network, DOT class, operating pressure, right? That it has the layers. So the first tab is a map tab. Let me zoom in. Okay. So you can see the first tab is a map tab. So you have contents in here. For your layers, you can save as a web map. If you have already base maps within your organization, maybe that's shared at the portal level. If you already have any base maps, that will show up in here, and then you can work with the date as well. We said pipeline referencing is time-aware data model, right? So I can go back in time. Let me see if I have a data set. I can go back in time. You can see that I'm like on January 7th, I didn't have this route in here, and looks like I didn't have events there either. So I can come back to today's date, which is March 9th. You can see that, that realignment in there, or the pipe extension was done and more events has been added. This is all coming from your time awareness, the from and to date that is available at the information model that we showed. So you can work with your dates in here, go back in time and see what your data was, like last month or last year or 5 years back. And you have simple navigation tools, search tools available, identify by measure. I can identify on this route, and it will give me all the available information. It tells what network is it, and it gives me all the attribute information. It will say where my route measures are starting and ending from, and where I exactly clicked on. Those identify tools are available. The second tab is the edit tab. This is where the user is doing edits to their events, right? So we provide widgets to do adding point events and line events. And this is that versioning thing. I was talking about in your configuration file. So I set up my configuration file to set up all this to true. So as a user, I can come in here and say, okay, I can switch to any other available version, or I can create a new one. So let me just go ahead and create a new version. I'm just going to say, this is Anjali's work area. I can provide some descriptions, and I'm going to switch to this. So as a user, I can come finish my work, and reconcile and post it maybe to the QA version. And the QA representative could do all the checks, make sure all the work has been done right, and can reconcile and post it to the parent version. However, the versioning workflow is within your organization. But I can, as a user, I can come in and create a version of my own, work on it, and once the work is done, I can reconcile and post it. And all the core capabilities that are available at versioning, that's available in here too. Have some selection tool sets in here. Let me go to map and make sure I have some of the layers switched on. Okay, so I have anomalies, and yeah, we can just work with the anomalies. So I have selection tool sets in here, right? This is where I pick the layer where I'm going to do the selection, and I pick this rectangle and just drag and drop. So it's showing me all the anomalies where I did the selection in here. And now this is opening the attribute table, and I can do any edits to it in here, and I can use the calculate button. If I want to assign any anomaly status for everything that I selected, I can come and say postponed. Okay. So it went ahead, updated all of that. But so this is for the events which are already in there. But what about when you want to add events to it? Events have been updated. Ah, no, don't do that. Okay. So I'm going to pan. We can work in this area in here. So let's say in this route I want to come and add an anomaly, or say I want to add a valve. So come to this widget in here, say point event. This is where I define which kind of event I am adding. Let's just go ahead, add an anomaly, and I'm going to use engineering network. If I know the route name, I can type the route name in here. Let's see if I'm typing this right. Is that right? I'm just going to use this tool in here to select. So that's the route. In here is where I'm going to provide information on my measure. I'm going to say I want to add anomaly at, say, measure 5000 or station 5000. So it's already showing me where it is adding. But in case as a user, maybe you don't have a measure for it. Maybe you just have coordinates for it, right? So what you can do is you can switch your method to say coordinates. And if you have the coordinates, you can type that in. I'm not too smart to remember the coordinates, so I'm just going to use this graphical representation. And maybe I didn't exactly click on the route. So what it does is it does the route measure translation, and it snaps it to the route. So if I clicked far away from the route, it used that perpendicular distance and gets to the route and tells what measure it is at. So I can add events either by having the route and measure information, or just the route and the coordinates. Or what I can do is also, there are other options available. So if I have other feature classes, I could do an offset also. So say if I had a valve and I found an anomaly 500 feet away from the valve, I can do that too. I can select this valve and I say add a new event, which is an anomaly 500 feet away from the valve. So different methods of how you can add events. Let's go ahead, finish this. This is where the event information model is what the user is providing, the route and measure or the geometry information. When I go to next is where all your business fields is going to show up. I'm using the UPDM data model, so you will see all the fields related to UPDM data model. And this is where the user will go put the business related fields. Anomaly type. Let's just assume I put all that information and I hit the save. And that's that anomaly, it got created. You can go to the selection set to select that one. So it shows that anomaly that we just created. So that's how we add our events in here. I'm doing okay on the time? Not really. This is the last tab, which is available in the event editor to do our quality control checks. As we talked about, pipeline referencing already comes with some quality control checks, such as detecting the gaps. Say in your DOT class, you want to say if there were gaps created. You can do checks on detecting the gaps. If you have overlap on the top of each other, you can detect those. If you have invalid measures, say your route was just going from 0 to 100, but you somehow managed to add an event which says measure 5000, that never exists, right? So it will detect all those invalid measures. But apart from the pipeline referencing checks, we really encourage our users to configure some of the data reviewer checks. So when you configure your data reviewer checks, those can be, that will be shown up in here as well. So majorly we have 3 tabs. The first one, map, is to do your navigations, your contents, saving bookmarks and all of that, which will be helpful for you for your visualization and moving around in the map. The second one is where you are creating your versions, if you wanted to creating your versions and selection sets available, just like your core, the desktop selection tools, those are all available. You can do selection using a rectangle, you can do select using attributes, all of those functionalities are available. And then you are doing editing your events. I showed you point events, but you can add line events such as your operating pressure, DOT class, inspections, leak survey, all of those you can add as well. And the last tab is your review tab, where you can do the quality control of all the events that you have developed. So from the enterprise, from the ArcGIS Enterprise, we have seen how to publish, how to make your linear referencing REST endpoint available, and what you can do by building custom widgets. There are widgets that you could download, how you can use your geoprocessing tools, how you can use model builder tool, and event editor is a part of the pipeline referencing. So when you have your ArcGIS Enterprise extension installed, the event editor comes as a part of it. As a user, all you will do is in this configuration file, you are providing your web map where to read at, and you are configuring your security. There are different types of configuration available as well, that you can work with the colors, the look and feel about it. Well, I went over 5 more minutes, but I'm happy to take any questions if you have.
So all of this is available, the stuff that you have in the web map?
Event editor? Yes, it is available. You have to buy the license.
No, I mean, it's downloadable, it's accessible.
Event editor? Yes, so when you install your ArcGIS pipeline referencing for server extension, when you install it, it downloads a folder called event editor. That's where the whole folder and that config file resides. And as you publish it, it's going to look at an enterprise level if you have that license available, and then it will expose these capabilities.
About the information model, timeline model. So how do we model the facilities, wells, right?
Yeah.
Other facilities, sunlight, city stages. So does this, timeline model consider that part?
So what pipeline referencing does is it's just looking at your information model for your routes and measure. How you design your database is like outside the pipeline referencing. Pipeline referencing will read those feature class, read that as long as it's a feature class. But the business related fields, how you build that hierarchy and everything, that's coming from your geodatabase design.
But pipeline is just a part of the oil and gas, right? Also
Yes.
It's associated as facilities.
Yes.
Like stations, wells, satellites, other part of
Yes. Your
physical facilities.
Uh-huh.
But use this model, considering that part of or just considering.
So pipeline referencing doesn't create a data model. It doesn't create a data model. It uses your data models and configures it so you can use the linear referencing component of it. So if your data model is already configured or designed in a way to respect, like say you have your pressure unit or the pressure hierarchy already established at the database level, it will respect it. It supports the relationship class and everything. So if you have that hierarchy already built in your data model, there's nothing special that pipeline referencing does. All it's reading is your database, how you configured.
I think what she's saying is the station to center line is all that's included in this model. If you have other other features in the facility, like a compressor station or something that has a lot of returns, big launchers and things like that, that's up to you to design a schema for those.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking is, does this model is scalable enough to consider that one?
I think so. I mean, you could model those as an event.
Yeah.
Just to keep track of where it is, but when you get to the actual facility, then you have to draft those up yourself.
Okay, I think I have to leave this place for the next presenter. You had a question, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, when you do network maintenance tasks like realignments and retirements, still doing that in Pro with direct connected database, or is that going to be supported by a feature service sometime?
The product team is looking into supporting featured services maybe in a release or next, but right now I was just hitting an enterprise geo database. But the product team is looking into working with the featured services as well.
And it's just using the traditional versioning model, not using branch versioning?
Right now, yes, we are still using the traditional versioning model, but we will definitely have capabilities as we evolve in this product. We're going to have capabilities with the branch versioning also, since we're going to be working with the utility network closely. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. Thanks.